We are live. How exciting, Carole. I'm just so delighted because this is your book launch day, and we've had a lot going on to get this day ready, and really delighted to be able to have this conversation with you. We were on the other day with the TV show that we do, but I really wanted to just have this conversation about what this experience has been like for you, and a little bit about your background. So let's start with your background as to, I got to bring up your, while we're talking, I'll bring up the little banner so people know what your book's about. It's called the Ask Framework. And let's talk about your background and how this book came to be.
So my background, as I got to support my husband through the Air Force, we moved often, and I had quite a variety of work, and all of them now fall underneath the umbrella of HR, to include facilitation, conflict negotiation, training and development, hiring, onboarding. And I have a senior HR credential because of getting to work with leaders on strategy, succession planning, mission, vision, and values. How do you connect it to behaviors? How do you hire correctly for the culture that you want? One of the interesting things about my past history is in the training and development realm, people still were asking how to communicate better on onboarding, performance reviews. And so one of the most interesting things I got to research when I finally got to fulfill a lifelong dream of going to graduate school was to really step into where are the hardest parts of communication at work. And feedback fell into the top 5, always, consistently. So between feedback and performance reviews, people are struggling with how to step into those conversations. And so my background really played a part in kind of recognizing that there wasn't a lot of information out there like this.
There wasn't. I'm sure there isn't. And the questions that you ask, the title is The Ask Framework: Questions That Elevate Your Influence, Performance, and Leadership. And how important is that is within the flow of the workforce. And we hear about people with getting performance reviews and being devastated and walking away feeling like, man, I'm not worth much, because it just really sometimes can really hurt what happens through that whole process. So in your experience, because you had an experience that was kind of pretty much, kind of left you going like, oh, how did that develop you into what you're doing today?
I think anytime we get frustrated, we're looking for answers. And like a lot of people, I had always had really good performance reviews. Like, you're doing great, I'm a hard worker. There was just the one time that you walked into performance review and the person wasn't prepared, or they started to make stuff up and it wasn't accurate, or you didn't feel it was fair, or a lot of people suffer from recency bias, whereas I only remember the most recent thing. And what if you were on a team and the project didn't do well? Sometimes that can overshadow somebody reviewing all of your work from the past period, and often it's 6 months or a year. And so that a lot of people come out getting something good, but then getting something that they may not feel is fair. And so having had that experience myself was eye-opening. And I had heard other people say, oh, I went in and I got to hear this, and then I got this information. Where'd that come from?
Right.
And when I started asking people, how did they step in that conversation? They go, I didn't have the right question. I didn't know how to step in that conversation. So I started doing the research, recognizing that we don't feel we have permission to ask better questions. We don't know that this is supposed to be a conversation. We don't recognize that in an interview even, that it's supposed to be a give and take conversation. And so when I really started to dig into it, I started recognizing where we got off on that foot of not knowing that we could ask questions. And that comes from being conditioned at school. So we know how to ask the question, instead of getting a better grade, how do I improve? because I always want to have areas to grow in. We forget to ask the question, well, what's the one thing I do really well?
What did I do
Yeah,
good?
what's the most meaningful thing I've contributed? And let the other person go, oh yeah, that's a good question. That's a good point. I need to. So often people assume that the person you work directly with or beside are complimenting your work. And so they feel as if to be helpful and optimize this short time together, they're going to be helpful and tell you where else you can grow, and forgetting to remind you to validate what you're already doing really, really well. So we have to step in as professionals, as employees. Stop waiting. Stop waiting for a compliment. Stop waiting for someone to recognize it. Stop waiting, because it doesn't serve you well. It erodes your own ability to value what you're contributing every day. So I'm giving people permission to step in and ask better questions. But just doing that, I found, wasn't enough, because they immediately go, "What? How? I don't know how to do this." And that's when I realized I need to do the research on tangible steps. Even if you want to be able to think on your feet, which is why it's called the framework, here are the 4 parts. Doesn't have to be in order. Just make sure you get these 4 pieces of information. It drives a much richer conversation and better answers.
That's truly beautiful. And I think it applies also to our family, because as we're raising our children, it's very, very easy to say, you didn't do this right, you didn't do that right, and you could improve here, but not really providing, that encouragement to that they did do something right, and always looking for those positive things that help them to really build their self-worth. So it works in the workforce, it works in how we speak with our family members.
It does. In fact, that's where I started to experiment to see how this would really play out. And it was fascinating. I started making sure that they knew exactly the topic I was talking about, which is, I reference this context. Make sure that you say, hey, in regards to dinner, right? It could be anything. The last time we went on a date, yesterday morning we were on a walk, whatever it is, make sure it's clear that they know where your head is before you ask a question. And then the research was really brilliant at helping me understand that while we can think about 3 things at once, we can only focus on one thing at once. So asking about, what was the most enjoyable part of the walk? What was your favorite part of the meal? What was the most fun aspect of the last date? Bringing it down to one thing helps the other person's brain just relax, and boop, that one thing pops up, and it makes it easy. It's a successful exchange. Like, okay, whew, I'm not walking on landmines. I'm not second guessing. And then what was really intriguing that I've never seen promoted in a professional conversation, let alone, casual conversations with your family, is, can you give me an example of how you experienced that? Can you give me an example of how you experienced that? Asking for an example of how they saw it through their eyes. That's where the magic was. I got to see myself through my husband's eyes, through my daughter's eyes, through my son's eyes. And I wouldn't have ever known that. I wouldn't have described it the same way. I wouldn't have known that they saw me that way. And that's what was so gratifying, just to be able to share and now understand more. And they actually, you could just see them enjoy that conversation, because the interesting thing about this idea of context, one thing, and example, is that the person you're talking to suddenly feels very important. They feel seen, they feel valued, they feel really heard, and they feel a tighter connection of having been able to use their own words to describe what they see. And that was the beginning of me knowing, ooh, we're on to something. This is kind of magical. And then I started looking at it, well, could you use this as a leader to give information, good or bad? And you can. This became this brilliant conversation that invited the other person in. You as an employee or leader could go ask for positive information instead of, hey, where can I improve?
Mm-hmm.
It drove a deeper focus on that conversation, and people walked away going, that was a really cool conversation. That was really meaningful for both people. And I think when people get gun shy at asking questions because they assume they know how it's going to be received, and when I was able to open people's minds to the person you're talking to actually likes it, they're like, oh.
Well, I think it would change the whole effect of the entire conversation. And for those that are in positions where they have to give performance reviews, that's a part of their job requirement. Sometimes I'm thinking that, I end up listening to my daughter and what she goes through with these performance reviews and the awkward situations at times. Having a fresh perspective and her knowing a different way of even performing those reviews can really just change the whole flow and actually the end result of how that individual really feels and their performance as they move forward in their work, as they continue on, instead of it, well, nobody likes me, or she picked on me the whole time, that type of arrangement. Yeah.
I think in the performance review, the thing that is so fakey is the fact that both people want to feel heard and respected. The leader wants to be able to lead and give good information. The person receiving information wants to understand how to really put it to use. And that's where I understood that to keep a conversation going, there was that fourth element. So in regards to your daughter, because I know we've talked about this, and she's a leader needing to give information, there are two interesting aspects. When you're getting to give positive information with more accuracy, it's a new conversation where you can say, here's the one thing I see you doing so well, and here's an example of how I see it. And the other person receiving it goes, oh, now I know what you're looking for.
Mm-hmm.
The person who's receiving it can also step in and say, I see that you've given me, let's say, a 4 out of a 5. What's the one thing I could do to move that 4 to a 5? And can you give me an example of how you'll recognize it? And that fourth part, that next part, if you really want to dive into actionable items, is the what and how questions. What is it that I could do first? How would you like me to start? What do you want to see at the end of the project to recognize I've done this? How do I inform you that this is actually becoming a challenge? This what and how questions drive a better conversation of what is being seen.
Kind of changes the trajectory, doesn't it?
It does. It moves it into, here's how we're going to handle it, in a very seamless, very high level professional conversation with no drama.
Right.
What are you looking for? How are you going to recognize it? Just tell me.
Very interesting. So for listeners, Carole's book is available right now on through many of the bookstores. It's on Amazon. We're doing a book launch through Amazon, and she has it in her hand, and mine hasn't come in yet. And pretty exciting. It's a fabulous book in the sense of it. She gives you that step-by-step. This is the way, it does, and it gives real life examples. And she's going to be doing another book coming up, which really would be more case studies on how this applies. But this book is beautiful because she gives true to life experiences in her own experiences, even from how it really, when she reflected back to even some questions from her childhood that really made an impact. And so I hope you will pick up a copy of this amazing book. Share it with somebody that really really could use it, because I know that some of us, we want to have the biggest impact. I think most of us do really want to have a big impact. It's sometimes we just don't quite know the procedures and the steps to accomplish this. And this is a really refreshing read. It's not difficult steps to follow, but the fresh perspective does make a huge difference. And we've got a lot of promotion going on right now. And Carole, I just wanted to celebrate with you the fact that you've got to this point. I know writing a book is not easy. It's not, I always say it's not
No.
faint of heart because there's a lot that goes into it. There's a lot of moving parts to making sure that that book gets seen and read and that you get heard, really, because as the leader that you are.
I'm probably like a lot of people who face the pandemic with, oh, how do I make use of my time? And this was an idea that I had percolating and took it, back into a hug. And I really have to thank a lot of people who have helped this process, my family, my friends, a lot of people I've talked to, people I've interviewed. But the next book, this book here, is also an invitation. If you pick this book up and you put it to use, or want to put it to use, and you do, I invite you to connect with me and let me know how it worked, because this is what I want to build the next book on, is the case studies of what you got out of it, what challenges you faced, because anything new has this unique little hill in our brain to get past. But I have worked with people, I have heard from people who've used this, and they were like, this was a lot easier than I thought. And I was so blown away by what happened that this is what the invitation is. I invite you to try this so that then your name can be in the next book of what you experienced and help us uncover maybe the challenges. Maybe there's a common challenge that everybody has. And I'd love to see everybody jump in and contribute to the next book.
That's beautiful, and I think there will be some really amazing feedback on this, as how to, because we're all concerned to make sure that not only in our family life, but also in the way we interact with friends and in the way we interact with business acquaintances and on the job, is vital to the success of any business or any operation that is taking place. So. Wow. Well, we celebrate with you today and so excited. And we do have the link right underneath. You can actually, if you don't want to use that link, you can also go to Amazon and just type in Carole Stizza, and you've got the, or the Ask framework. Either way, it will bring it up. And just pick up this copy. You can get it in Kindle or in paperback, and just really enjoy the content that Carole it's so eloquently brought to us.
Well, and I look forward to, I think I used to give reviews in books, and I never knew that if people read them. And I can say that now, I'm appreciating the reviews that are coming in. I've gotten emails, and I said, hey, do you mind putting that on Amazon? And several people have, and I'm really excited to see what is the one thing that people liked the most about whatever part of the book that they read or put to use. And it's been fun to hear, and everybody's different. Everybody picks something different that they love. So it's been really rewarding.
Awesome. Very good. Well, congratulations, and thank you for having the heart to bring this piece of art, this work of art, and heart to the world. And so appreciate it. Pick up a copy. You're going to really enjoy it.
And thank you to everyone who does, because this is a labor of love.
Yes, it is. All right. Thank you. To your success.
Thanks.